This is True OF Entertainment.
Good day.
Here we are. Yeah, good day to you. Yeah.
How's your...
I almost feel Canadian today because I had my own bushfire to put out really quickly before the show.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've had a few fires this year, and they not. I guess it's going to be that way for a while yet. Global warming issues, and I think people have to be aware of a lot of things. We've had a little bit of rain in some areas, but not in the right areas. So anyway, we can't do personally a lot about that right now. We can do some artwork and try and help people understand about. I guess I like to personally. I like I guess bring across some of the environmental aspects within artwork sometimes, and it makes people think a little bit about. It doesn't mean they're going to change their life completely, but it's like an awareness, sort of. It's like stubbing your toe every once in a while. Yep, that bedpost, you can kick it every time with your toe.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I remember it was one of the first things I saw about your art when we first spoke to you. Was it nearly 3 years ago now, slightly longer?
Yeah.
So
Anyway, today we have Ian McLean, an Ontario artist. Quite different work. I mean, we see traditionally a lot of typical the landscape or some different settings, and we're actually going to go into, I don't know, a little deeper in a different way. I mean, the color palette's quite different. Sometimes a little austere, a little, it's like under fluorescent lighting sometimes. Then you're trying to talk to him about, I guess I'll call it an art journey, but really it's about a discovery with himself and the canvas, and understanding some of the, the aspects of, you're peeling layers back, and you're trying to figure out who you are through your art, and who you are as, say, a Canadian, or a view as a Canadian painter. And they're making inroads more and more. We're not just 50 years old as a country anymore, and we're becoming quite diverse in in ethnicities, and I think the quality of work has jumped immensely as far as what's happening, and I'm very proud of our Artists in Canada members that come on our show. And let's bring Ian in here, and we'll just talk with him a little bit about.
Yeah, just before he jumps in, just one thing. Then you said like a different color palette. Do you mean like for Canadians, or just in general? For Canadian art, or just
It's one of those. It's more stark, but the colors.
Okay.
Green isn't just the typical green. Greens, they take on a different, almost a fluorescence look to them, yet they're not. I don't think so. They're just kind of, he's a little minimalist, yet we're going to go through his beginning stages as to where he is right now. So I think it's kind of understanding that you don't have to paint the banana doesn't have to be yellow. One of those kind. Let's just say that, right? But I think it's just.
I'll bring Ian on, and we'll just quickly say hello to him, and then I'll leave you guys to it.
Yep.
And have a great show. And welcome to Ian.
Thanks, David. Good to see you again.
And yes, you too, albeit briefly. But
great, thanks. Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm just trying to get some of my other daily stuff done, other than I can't get much artwork done for some reason. Summertime is just busy with like a squirrel trying to put stuff away and get everything cleaned up, but I'm trying to make some headway on some other projects I'm working on. But
I hear you.
Anyway.
Well, as I say, guys, I'm going to go clean up my end, so I'll see you at the end of the show.
Thanks.
Have a great show.
Hi, Paul. Or David, thanks.
Yeah, it's we've talked before on one of our previous interviews. We had our panel discussion, and then I thought, I have to get Ian back. We got to dig a little deeper into what you're doing, and I think I've had that little time frame to sit and think about. Try putting myself in your chair or behind your easel a little bit, you paint differently than I would paint, and than a lot of other people paint. And I think we're just trying to understand who you are, and as a Canadian painter, and your vision, a little bit of how you see, not so much, I guess, a landscape, but a lot of your stuff is it's kind of suburbia, you know,
Mhm.
and it has a context of I don't know, it feels a little isolation. You know, there's this isolation that maybe is what Canadians feel, that a little bit. There is an isolation factor, or you know, you're in the country, but your perceptions of what I guess suburbia is the word. You know, we're living in the suburbs, and we're expanding dramatically into areas that maybe should have just been left as farmland. But they're popping up buildings. Like Toronto is massive. It's, you know, the GTA is gobbling up all the good land around the lakes that should maybe been used for different things, maybe. But I guess that's the nature of humans. They do different things. But your perception on your work, like where you, we'll go through a bunch of different things here, but where are you today? Like a little bit as to your vision of what's happening with you.
Where am I work with my where am I with my work right now? And
Yeah,
should I start
yeah,
and maybe or first of all, I love the work that you do too. By the way, Paul, I've been your painting. So from one painter to another, I think we kind of get what one another is doing. But certainly, yeah. I mean, I even ask myself, am I am I a landscape painter, or am I you know, representational? I'm often the work that I do, I would say almost exclusively includes the built environment in some way. So I certainly come from a tradition of painting. I've been painting for a very long time, for most of my life actually, and I learned painting in a very traditional manner. So I very much learned the process of painting. I've been painting with oils for a very long time, and then I studied, like a lot of artists, like most artists do. We study the masters, and we learn from them. We learn about how to actually construct a painting, how to maybe depict reality, if that's what if that's what our goal is. But also, I think thematically, you think about where you fit in as a painter, and for me specifically, a Canadian painter,
yeah,
like yourself. So I think of the history of Canadian painting, and I think of you know, the Group of Seven, and so many of us were influenced by what they did, and so I certainly have an affinity for the Canadian landscape, and very much respect for it. And I love to get into nature. I love to go to Northern Ontario. I love to paddle, canoe. I have a boat. I'm on the lake. But I just felt for me it was really important to think about my connection to the Canadian landscape and my personal connection to it, and where I grew up from, and what I know about it. So I can just recall in early days when I was a teenager being exposed to early Canadian fiction and the genre of, you know, thinking about people like Northrop Frye, and he taught us about the garrison mentality. He taught us about the fortress mentality, and Margaret Atwood reminding us of, and by no means am I a scholar or an expert on Canadian literature, but it really had an impact on me thinking about where I fit in with that, with the built environment and I guess more of the social landscape. So I think that's where a lot of my work started and where it continues to today. So the social connection to the landscape, really.
yeah. I think influences become unique to the artist. Sometimes some people get it just by flipping through books, some reading, following certain authors that offer, I guess, even little wordscapes, you know, these little one, two, three lines that just, they're like a riff. They just stick in your head, and you
Mhm.
go, oh,
Yeah,
that's a trigger. That triggers me to a thought
right.
that leaves you into, how do I depict that? How do I make that part of my genre? Like you
Mhm.
say, and you almost want to take those little, cut them out of the book and paste them on the wall and say that's me, right?
Yeah.
She's like Margaret Atwood, is a brilliant writer. A great visionary of who we are, and probably more so in the last 20 years of her writing. I mean, fairly epic pieces that are, rocking the world. You say, well, these are the people that help us get found. Otherwise, who's a Canadian painter? Who cares? Like in the world of painters, um, are we just young fledglings that are just trying to find our wings to get out there? And you're going, yes, we are, but we got our elbows up and we're digging our way, and we're going to climb the ladder. And we're going to, I think at some point, I mean, as Canadians, we're only 150 years as an entity, right? But I'm going to get Stephen to, sorry, David. I always get Stephen because Stephen's away for a little bit here. I get David to start up our first images here, and which are, there we go. So these ones, I was looking, it's quite different. These are your early days of some works, and they feel very still lifelike, in a landscape. So, and the landscape being an interior landscape. So I think we'll just talk a little bit more about where you've been. Now, Ian's been a participant, I guess, 5 years ago or so on landscape. What is it, Canadian Landscape?
Landscape Artist of the Year, Canada.
Yeah. So, can you give us a little bit about that experience of being, guys running around TV cameras and they're trying to shoot you, and then, it's that round robin of who's going to make it to the podium. I mean, I can't imagine. It's sort of like a paint night or what do you call it, a paint war thing going on. But can you describe a little bit of that event and what had happened?
Sure, yeah. So this was a reality TV show that was based on, I think it was a BBC series that originated it.
Yeah.
So this was produced and aired on CBC, and so I was one of 18 artists from across Canada selected to participate in this reality TV show competition. And so it involved being taken to a mysterious location. We weren't informed ahead of time as to where we were going. So it made it very exciting. I mean, certainly I've never experienced anything like this before. So in my episode, we went to Cobourg, Ontario, and we were on the waterfront on the harbor in Cobourg. We each had our own pod, our own little studio that was built for the TV show. I was mic'd. I had cameras. There were cameras all around. Directors, producers running around, and it was a real thrill, a real highlight. And so the judges for the program were Mark Mayer he was the director of the National Gallery of Canada, Joanne Todd, who was prolific Canadian painter based in Toronto. And then the series was hosted by Sukyin Lee, who's had a long history with media in Canada. So it's fantastic just even to meet those figureheads, really, those icons in Canadian art and media, and just have this opportunity to to put myself out there. And it really did feel like a risk. I mean, it was very much plein air painting. We're on the spot. I'm not exactly a plein air painter. I'm very much a studio painter, but landscape is very much a part of what I do. So I think that's why I was maybe selected for the show. So we had 4 hours to look at the landscape, to paint what we saw, and deal with what may come along during that process. And it was a thrill. It was really very exciting for me.
Yeah, I think it was followed by a lot of artists. They were somewhat inspired by that. They could sit down and live the life with you a little bit without the risk. They could just, I mean, they kind of root for certain ones, and then of course they'd say, oh, the one that was chosen, you go, oh my God, they chose that artist. They said, whatever, it goes through them. But that's part of that excitement that they've been into that program. They did the time clock. You've only got 27 minutes left, and you haven't even got that color down yet.
Yeah. No, so it was nerve wracking, and what you saw is really what was happening. It was all. I mean, certainly it was edited, but we were on the spot, and very much a time limit where there's a short period of time for lunch. You could take little breaks if you needed to, but what you saw is the way it was. So it's still available on CBC Gem. I think they still carry it on there, so archived on there. So
Yeah.
it was a blast. It was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good for artists to, step out on the ledge every once in a while. And it's nice to, take your coffee and just go in leisurely on your Saturday and go and paint in your studio.
Well,
yeah.
The thing about it is, and any artist knows, and you know this, is that producing art is very much, it's a solitary activity. You are in your studio, you're by yourself. You typically certainly don't have cameras on you all the time. You don't have people interviewing you while you're painting.
Yeah.
So it was a bizarre experience, but definitely fun. I was thrilled to be a part of it, for sure.
I've always said that if you go plein air painting and you're out in the deep woods, just take out your paints. Somebody will come along. It always happens.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And you paint in the city, and there's always people bugging you, looking at your work, commenting. So it's really hard to concentrate when there's a whole bunch of people around you. But it's great. It's a great distraction to master if you can. It's sort of like zoning in on something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a little bit of the highlight. I love that story about how that can happen. Can you talk a little? Okay, this is an early piece from your work, and it's transitioned from this to quite a thing. It's an interior which is consistent with some of your things, but can you just walk us through this piece, and then we'll just kind of scroll through a number of the pieces and show people those. Yeah, and we'll talk as we go.
Yeah, very much from a period of time where I was focusing on interiors and domestic interiors. It's quite a large painting. It's about, I think, 6 feet by 4 feet. So it fills a space. It fills a wall. It's of it's actually a tiny figurine. The figurine is only like 6 inches tall, right? It's a small little China figurine. It carries a certain history. It's an actual one. I actually own it to this day. It didn't belong to me initially, but it carries a story. It carries a familiar kind of history, and I think it was an object that was imbued with very much a narrative, a lot of memory in that particular object, and I'll probably just kind of leave it at that. But I like the fact that I wanted to make it monumental. I wanted to make it larger than life. I wanted to make it kind of imposing in kind of a symbolic way. And so I'm kind of zooming in, based on photos of the actual object. And I just like the idea of interiors, and I think it does go back to that, that Canadian kind of experience. And you wouldn't typically think of interiors when you think of Canadian experiences, but when I do think about what I learned in those early days about, Canadian literature, and that, nature was considered hostile, nature was considered threatening, certainly for early settlers. And so there was very much kind of an insular kind of defensive and inward kind of looking notion, I think, in literature at that time, specifically Canadian. So, and I think of writers like Sinclair Ross, who I think he was from Saskatchewan, actually, Paul, but he wrote As for Me in My House, and it was about dreams and ambitions and ideas for one's life contained within a home. And so I set it within kind of like a banal, kind of a mundane kind of environment, not exactly the type that I grew up in, but there are remnants of nostalgia, maybe in 1960s, 1970s kind of time period. And so a lot of the work at the time was figurative as well. So I included a figure apparently on a phone, apparently looking outward, looking to another place, another environment. So I certainly wanted a painting that had some mystery in it. I wanted to be provocative. I wanted it to be in your face, and really it was a period in my career, early in my career, where I was getting, so I'm from a small town. I'm from Sarnia, Ontario, actually, is where I live, Southern Ontario. Very supportive art community here. In my early days in my career, I got tons of support locally in local galleries, starting with small galleries and kind of moving up. But I kind of felt I wanted to somehow go beyond a little bit and I'll say get noticed in some way, right? So I started working large and transporting artwork down the 401 to Toronto, and just coming up with images that I found kind of compelling, and I wanted a reaction in some way, I think, to the work.
Yeah, I sort of seen these little porcelain figures before, very 19th century looking things, and they almost there was a rural context to them. But it almost feels a little Hopper-esque to me, Edward
Yeah.
Hopper, and I can see that in your work as we go through here, and it's more so than, say, trying to follow a group of seven.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you go out into Algonquin in the fall, it's pretty hard not to not to follow their vein. But it's just nice to find tertiary roads that we can go down that are us individually and how we vision things. So there's another one of your interior pieces, and I love this piece. This one feels very 50s, late 50s, 60s to me. Part of that is maybe my age group, but I ran around as a kid in my mom and dad's house, and how, I mean, they didn't have social media, didn't have a lot of things. If you had a TV set, you were doing well. And everything was kind of centered around those days. And I remember those days. Saturdays were special. We got to eat in the living room with TV trays. I couldn't believe it. And, it was like they made the special moments that were there. So it had a really a fondness for me, that I, as an individual, looking at that and saying, how do I depict that time? It's really hard for, say, me to go back and look and say, how would I depict my time as a child? And I think those are important routes to do, is to look back on yourself a little bit, to see forward, right? To find that mirror that is you. But this nicely designed piece, I love it, how it just leads you in.
I have kind of a love for I think I've got it out of my system a little bit, but like kitschy 1950s, 1960s kind of, whether it's lamps or decor items or furniture, or there's something about that period that was over the top. Whether it was tasteful or not is another question. A lot of times it really wasn't, but I love the use of pattern. I love the use of kind of embellishing these maybe otherwise mundane environments. So I'm thinking I'm wanting the viewer to find it a very familiar space. There's a sense of invitation into the space. Parts of the environment that we can probably all relate to in some way. Maybe if you're a particular vintage, I guess you could relate to them. And then I'm just looking again at the social landscape, so the dynamics between individuals.
Yeah. So a lot of these early pieces, they're kind of the post-war period. There was kind of a positive thing after the war. I mean, people getting jobs, they're working, the color palette brightened up. You see things that were, skirt lengths shortened, fashion changed dramatically in women's wear within a 10-year period, from the 40s to the 50s, and kind of in not so much a romantic way, but it was just the feelings came out. I think different types of artwork were wanted to, I guess, become landscapes that they could go into and out of on a regular basis. So they didn't have a lot of other electronic distractions in their life, but they could resonate with the pieces of work that were a little odd and a little bit out there, and I think it's nice it's an era that we hopefully will get back into, where people get back into saying, let's see ourselves in these pieces of work. I mean, they were saying 2024, kind of a downturn in the big art world after a big boom of, and I'm talking about the multi-millions and billions of dollars that are spent in auctions and such.
Mhm.
But the local small markets probably are still pretty stable through that period. But the big galleries that were doing the big sales they're down according to 15%. They're talking worldwide type of things. But I think going to some more here is a little bit more.
Yeah. So just carrying on with, so this would be a few years after those last ones. So I started to, even though I love, I spent many years as a figurative painter and as a portrait painter, and I'm really drawn to the figure when I look at art, look at painting specifically. So the human element, I really still wanted to be part of the artwork, but I actually removed people from a lot of from the interiors, right? So there's still very much, I think, a presence. There's a human presence, but I wanted to see how the spaces could say something, the objects, the arrangement of stuff in one's life, and maybe how we use those things to suggest something, maybe to say something about ourselves.
Yeah. No, I think I love the abstract aspects of this
Mhm.
piece. And I don't really look for people to be in them. Like, it's just like you're walking into this space.
Mhm.
Um, Otherwise, there's people sitting there and they're smoking cigarettes. Usually, they were like, there is of that era of affluence and
Yeah.
or feeling important is really what it was about. Like, and I think in the day, the cigarette was that part of the thing. If you could afford cigarettes, and you lived in a clean environment like this, it kind of raised the level of you. You felt I'm a little bit I'm doing better than my mom and dad did. I'm aspiring to a little sophistication, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a response to that lifestyle.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, there's a certain projection. I think we're projecting something. We're hoping to project something about who we are. So I like the sense of a narrative. Another an artist who had a big influence on me early on would be Eric Fischl, the American figurative painter, who's still producing fantastic work today. But I really loved the way he included elements of domestic life, and he used a lot of figures in his work. I love the way he painted, but I really loved what he was saying with his work about who we are, how we live in our spaces. There's a lot of focus on that, and what those spaces might suggest to others, or what we hope to suggest to others, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
another interior.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I feel this. It's still Hopper-esque, but it's indoors. I feel it's it's not quite Colville-y. And I hate to. I only mention names to resonate with people, and it's not that you follow these people directly to copy. I mean, I'm trying to, but I think it's, yeah. I just love the shapes. I mean, you're dealing with some ovals and some rectangles, and there's a color palette it's stark, but it's really they belong together. The soft edges on the couches and the things like that just kind of settle everything into the room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, color is hugely. I really try to use color as a bit of the narrative as well. So more than, I guess, just rendering, what I see, is how I can try to use color to maybe remind us of something or take us to a place. So when I think of like the six, I was pretty young in the '60s, to be honest, but into the '70s and that kind of thing. What are the colors I remember? I remember like a certain kind of green, a certain kind of blue. And so for me, it's kind of intended to maybe take us back there, but then I intentionally, kind of want the time to be fluid, I guess, in some ways. So could this be even speaking of today, or is it speaking of the past? I mean, I'm throwing in, those elements of that 1960s, 1970s kitchen there as well. But I think it's also meant to be referring to, again, how we live in those spaces and how we maybe try to arrange our physical spaces to suggest something.
Yeah, I just love the relationship of shapes within this piece, the abstract aspects of it. The picking up of shapes, either the top of the lamp down to the table. There's still ovals at different levels, and that directional thing of bringing people into an environment to look at. And is it inviting to me to say, I want to go and sit in that chair? Is that what it's about? Or is it really about, they almost, if you've been to, it's like a diorama of a room where you walk in and say, and I won't say this is an era, but there's a lifestyle here, and there's a feeling of how we felt as people at that time. And for people that are younger today, they just say, well, I don't understand that. But hopefully through a series of paintings, they would understand that's a feeling for that. No different than, say, a group of seven saying, this is how we saw the landscape in our day, in the early 1900s. We said, this is how we saw Canada. Well, now we're seeing artists representing Canada so many different ways and saying all these visions that are coming from different angles, yet how we interpret not just the landscape, but as people, as our lifestyle and how we do things today is quite different than was done 100 years ago. I mean, we're not quite hunter gatherers anymore. We were kind of doing that in the day a little bit.
Yeah. So this one's called Land Claim. So I'm starting to now get outside, and I'm a huge architecture buff. I love studying architecture. I love visiting works of architecture wherever they may be. And there was something I found really intriguing about this pod. Now, I've never actually had the opportunity to see an actual pod house, but this is an actual house that I think was manufactured in the American Midwest, and probably in the 50s or 60s or something like that. And I think the idea behind it was, and I'm drawn to modernist architecture and that notion of utopia and the desire to create a utopian existence. And if you just have the perfect space, if you just have the perfect home, the perfect environment, you could also have the perfect life. So I'm certainly playing with this. This is also a very large painting. It's probably 6 or 7 feet tall. So again, very confrontational. I guess you're kind of become part of the painting in a way. So it's kind of it's a weird it's a weird house. I can't even imagine living in a place like that. But I just think of what the whole idea was behind that, and I think the idea again was to create. Okay, if we just have this perfect mobile kind of home, we got it all. But I like to add more. Almost as if it's not quite enough. So there's the hot tub, there's the muscle car in there, just to add a little extra, because we need extra, right? We need a little bit more. And then the landscape, again, I love that idea of the landscape that's ever present. And as Canadians, we're very much a part of the landscape, but it's, again, there's a bit of threat there. There's a bit of loss of control. So we have some efforts to control, I guess, with a little hedge. I guess that's supposed to be kind of a hedge that's built around it. But yet the reality remains around as well.
Yeah. Well, it feels a little celestial, a little UFO-y, a little bit too. It's like, what's out there? Like, You know,
Yeah.
there's got this big sky feeling there, and you're saying, how did this pod land there, or did it just build there? But I think in these days, those 40s and 50s, you could see that through the cars and the vehicles that were designed in the day. They were very, that bullet shapes, and they had all kinds of fenders and all kinds of chrome, and they were probably, it picked up a lot of that from aircraft design that was happening in the day, and went through into the vehicles, and I think this preview was probably made out of fiberglass, one of these things to start with, probably in those. And I know there's a number of British shows out there on just crazy stuff, people building, and a lot of I've seen a number of these pod homes and people living in an airplane or a helicopter body. It's just like they gut it and do some strange stuff, but there's this the want to do something that is you personally, and you personalize the space in your way, right? And I think that's kind of what you're doing with these, is just personalizing that space, how you see it.
Yeah, so I'm wanting to acknowledge the landscape, wanting to acknowledge that
I mean, it's different than other people are seeing things and doing things, and I think it's important that artists do that. You got to take a little risk with what you do. And we talked about that in one of our last programs, is about risk taking, and not everybody, they go into a gallery and they see that, and he said they went in looking to see a pretty landscape of a lake and a tree and a bunch of things, but they go in and they come out and they remember this painting. They forget all about all the other paintings that may have looked similar, of that they loved them, but they don't really remember them and depict them, where they could probably come out, and if this was a one-off sitting in there, they go, you made an impact with them. I mean, if the gallerist is on your side and helping you promote your career, and you're actually committed to that type of work, I think it has validation. That's how you paint, that's how you do it. I mean, a little bit more.
And I guess that's just speaking to that. That's something that I look for as a viewer as well. When I look at other people's artwork, of course, we all want to connect in some way. And so for me, I want to see some artwork that has some impact on me in some way. I think there's a space for everybody, every type of artist out there. But I've been fortunate to be able to build a career on. We all want to go our own direction, right? We want to be true to ourselves and what we want to do. So I've been lucky in that way to produce art that I love producing. I love making it, and I love communicating in some way to the viewer, right?
Yeah.
So this one is also based on actual architecture. I can't remember where now, but I haven't seen this one, but I found an image of it. So of course I've embellished it, I've changed it, but it's very much a containment of living environment within the architecture, and it's a controlled environment. I love the use of pattern, maybe to suggest that sense of control and arranging one's life and trying to maybe perfect one's life. And as much as we may try, other elements may come along that are unexpected. And of course, I'm kind of talking about metaphor and symbol in some ways too.
Yeah.
And then another big influence. I mean, I've always loved the work of Turner, right? So the landscape artist, the British landscape artist Turner, and his use and his depiction of the sublime. And I like that notion when I caught on to that idea of depicting the sublime. And it often featured nature, maybe a little out of control, right? Nature that we can't tame. It's impossible to tame the forces around us. And so I'm certainly not suggesting I can paint like Turner, but I can look at a Turner and learn a lot about how he did show the environment, how he showed the natural world. So I think this one, again, it's a large painting. It's another 6-footer. For me, kind of massive, right? Really difficult to transport, but that's another story. But so I started including nature that's contained, and I loved on so many levels images of swimming pools. I mean, who doesn't love a swimming pool? I mean, I love the leisure suggestion of a swimming pool. But again, for me, I'm wanting to maybe look at it as another effort to try to control or contain or confine natural elements. Yeah, so storm over Lake Huron. So I live on Lake Huron,
Yeah.
and very much a part of my life. And if you've never seen Lake Huron, never been to one of the Great Lakes, it's fascinating to bring somebody who's not from this area out to the lake, out to Lake Huron, and it really can look like an ocean. It can behave like on many days.
Yeah.
So again, I think with this one too, I'm kind of probably paying homage to Turner in a way as well, with his skies that are crazy and almost violent in some ways. But again, I'm looking at the human element and maybe suggesting the ways that we try to contain it. Maybe we try to avoid nature. Maybe we try to, if we're going to be a part of nature, maybe we will only integrate with it or involve ourselves with it if we can control it in some way. So for me, something like modernist architecture, and this is not to suggest that I've seen that exact home on Lake Huron. I don't think it even exists on Lake Huron. So I created it, I fabricated it, I built it as a painter, just to suggest that idea of attempts at control, attempts at controlling one's environment. And those are, I guess those are just like shots of water, jets of water going through the over the swimming pool as well. So there's a little bit of surrealism, I think, that's
Well, for sure. Yeah. No, and I like the geometry of the building, you know, the maze-like feeling that you can get from you know, urban life. And you want your urban life next to your leisure, which would be the lake or the pool. And you say, you know, but yet I want that modernist feeling. I want to take everything with me. I am not going to give up anything. I want to load the car full with everything I want. And when I get there, I'll have everything. You can't take everything with you.
Yeah.
You have to make decisions.
Yeah.
So, and you know, there's sophisticated thoughts. I mean, there's a lot of things as an artist we put into our work that sometimes we don't even see it until we get back at it the next day or a week, but maybe other people respond to it. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, there's Waldo is in there. I didn't know I put Waldo in.
Well, earlier in our conversation, Paul, I think you'd referred to peeling the onion, and I like that. In that, I mean, of course, as the artist, I'm making decisions for the entire thing. I know why I want to include that building. I know why I want to include the pool, the water jets, the sky, but I can't necessarily expect all of that from my viewer. But the viewer may have their own kind of connection to the architecture, to that sky. Maybe they're reminded of maybe the color triggers something in them. So I do like that notion in art. When I look at art, I like it to maybe wash over me in some way. And again, I love the idea of mystery. This one is actually in a permanent collection of a public gallery now. So it's been great to get that kind of recognition as well, I think.
Yeah, and acceptance. I think if people don't see something different in the work every day or every week, I think you've lost something, because I think people need to find themselves in the work at some way, and that's why they buy work. You know, they say that inspires me a little bit daily or weekly when I come down and I look at, I saw that today, and that gives me that feeling, and I'm hoping that, you know, we don't all have to sit there and look at a big electronic screens and say, oh, I'll just change the image today on this electronic screen, and I can have a Degas or I can have a Monet or whatever. You think it's nice to, and here we go. This again, that swimming pool in an urban, in a rural setting, a very rural, probably in a forest setting. You know, again, your control aspects that you just talked about.
Yeah.
But it feels very and you know, 1984 to me. The book, you know, this hidden place in the woods that is yours, right? And nobody else knows about it, right? And it's just like my space. And I'd go, I love this painting just for that. I go, my gosh, this one evokes a different thing in me than probably anybody else would ever think of. But you know, you want to take all those beautiful things with you. And I go to the woods and I want my lake, which will have to be my pool. I want my reclining chair. And so again, you're taking those things with you into the perfect space. That's what I saw.
Again, this is probably from, I think it's about 2012, so about 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And it's another large painting again. And again, I want it to be, I want you to connect with it, I want you to react with it. And so I grew up in very much a rural environment, where the land was overwhelming around. I mean, there were neighbors and so on, but the natural environment was very much a part of where I grew up. And so now I'm in more of a residential environment, but you can't avoid the nature. You can't avoid our environment. And so sometimes I guess I think about early settlers in my neck of the woods too, and what they encountered and what they discovered, and how much the nature was a part of who they were and their survival. And again, in Canadian literature, it's about that survival instinct, and we're gonna survive. We're gonna take this on. We're gonna, even though we're living in very much considered harsh environment at the time, we're gonna impose ourselves on it. We're gonna cut those trees. We're gonna control nature. And again, like you said, Paul, that idea of the swimming pool and those aspirations and the hopes, and if I just have this, if I have that, if I have those chairs, if I have the pool, everything will be perfect. But natural forces continue. So, and this is actually part of an exhibit at the Glenhurst Art Gallery in Brantford, Ontario, called Forces of Nature, where we were including work where the natural elements really were a force, and how do we deal with them? How are we part of that environment where we live?
Yeah. Green is my nemesis. And you use a lot of green, and a lot of it's very acidic. An acrid color, and you're dealing with viridians and things. And you go, to me, viridian was one of those mixing colors. I get lovely grays out of them with mixing with viridian, but it's a raw color, but it has that shock thing, a little bit of the look, and it has also that night aspect of phosphorescent lighting or fluorescent lighting. It gives you a different feeling than just sunlight. It has that interior man-made light that is reflected on those objects. So the color is really influencing the subject matter even more so, right? This one, I love this one. I love the grays in this one. It's just, there's I don't know what it is. The trees that are within this concrete, the pool, the whole thing again, and you have this domicile that you're living within. It's kind of a stripped down forest. It's just
This painting was actually the submission for that Landscape Artist of the Year Canada TV show. So, and this was on the program. So at some point somebody wrote something about my work and said I'm kind of like a real estate, in that I'm presenting like a dream-like possibility of what lived life could be like. And so I think with the color, I am wanting to choose colors that are otherworldly and dreamlike, I think. So they're kind of based in reality, but certainly amped up and provocative. So I want the colors to kind of draw the viewer in. I think that's where the neutral background kind of works for me in this one, is that the colors are intended to maybe pop a little bit more. And I often use an underpainting, usually a fairly brilliant underpainting, so I think you can see the remnants of the orangey kind of rusty color walking through. But again, yeah, just that notion of efforts to build, efforts to construct, efforts to convey maybe a vibe or a lifestyle. And despite those efforts, nature wins. Nature continues to play its role.
Yeah, nature is what nature is. I mean, you think that you can make a better garden, more beautiful yard. You can put the most beautiful color combinations together. No, nature has this ability to put amazing colors together that just work automatically. And we sit down and look for our complementary all the time, try to find that complementary color in our neutrals, and trying to get your painting to have that zing or the feeling you want. I mean,
yeah. And so again, with this one talking about zinging colors, so this is called Flood, and I'm taking modernist architecture again. I was also influenced by an author named Alain de Botton, and he wrote a book called, he's kind of like a pop philosopher, and he wrote a book called The Architecture of Happiness, and it was about how we use living spaces to convey something, or how the living spaces can convey something about us, or and so I definitely rolled with that one with this kind of work. So again, I love the minimalism of the architecture, the aspirations of that architecture, and definitely playing with color, definitely amping up the color, and taking it to some other kind of space. This is definitely not not an environment I grew up in, but again, that idea of kind of nature omnipresent, right? Despite the pool, despite the hard lines of the architecture, there's a messiness there. There's a messiness around, right?
Yeah, this is a hotter, warmer painting for sure, and it probably is more global warming to me than ever. Some of the pieces of thoughts, but even it kind of reminds me some of the book by Ayn Rand, Fountainhead. And if anybody has read that book, it's one of those spaces where you create spaces for people that they don't ever want to leave. There's just one of those ones. It's almost like a jail, and they've been a prison. And just understanding people. Into some of these pieces here. So this is a little bit more suburbia now. You've kind of moved. This is the last 5 years ago, somewhere in there, for what you're painting in the next little while. So we got a few more images to get through here.
Yeah. So I guess I started to focus a little more on the type of architecture that maybe is a little more familiar around where I live. And I love to play with titles as well. So I love titles that can be taken in different ways, right? So the title of funk, I think it depends on who you are, how you read that word, right? And I love that kind of play. I'm being playful. I like to be. I'm a fairly playful artist, I think, in that way. Is that where there may be moments in my paintings that some might think are brooding and maybe mysterious. Before you fall too far down that hole, I want to maybe take it to a different place in the artwork too. So, is the funk a certain rhythm, a certain type of music? Is it kind of like with a lively beat, or is it the complete opposite interpretation of the word funk? I mean, the colors down below, the pattern down below certainly is not realistic. So I'm liking that blend of the abstract within something that's maybe fairly representational too.
I think, even the abstraction of the lines in the foreground leading to the house, I think it's again, that control aspect, that you're bringing through your work. You're trying to control that environment. And when you put a straight object like that in a visual image like this, it's very man-made. in a control aspect, and just move into here. So this one is similar to the one with the pool that had all the gray. There's that little adobe, or not that little house aspect of it, like modernist, warm space inside and cool space outside a little bit. There's a feeling of that there's this table and chairs thing that's happening on the patio, but they almost feel suspended in the forest, like you're not touching the ground, where it's sort of, I don't know if you ever watched the Jetsons, they always lived on these little pods in the sky, and you go,
Mm-hmm.
you created an environment that says, I'm not going to touch the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to create this with a minimal amount of distraction or disruption. I'm not going to disrupt. I'm going to build this modernist thing of my own, but I'm going to have all this beauty around me, but I'm not going to touch the forest and ruin it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I'm close to.
Oh, you're good, Paul.
I'm close. Well, I try to read what I can into for me, and I like to say to the artists, I tell them how I feel about a piece, and whether they like it or not, I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. But I think it's conveying a thought, and somebody else will get it completely different. Which I love that part. Yeah.
No, for sure. No, I think you really nailed it really well, and I think in this one, I think there is that avoidance of the natural world in here, despite the fact that it's very much immersed within it, and again. I love it when a viewer can read it at different levels, right? So somebody maybe just sees it as a modernist home. There's a little patio set there. There's some little trees there, but could it also be read as a metaphor for how we live our lives, for things that we may encounter in one's life? And I'm hoping that you can maybe take deep dives like that as well, right?
How important do you think that is for artists to bring those up for people, like those kind of thoughts? Is that kind of a role of an artist, a little bit?
I think you have to be really careful, actually, as an artist. I think I think it's important, actually, despite the fact that we're talking about all my work today. I think it's important to allow the work to speak for itself. I think you have to be careful not to over-explain things too much, because sometimes I do believe that can kind of lessen the impact of an artwork. So I like the fact we're really just conversing and talking about the work. But I think the viewer is pretty smart, right? And I think they can react and see what I'm hoping them to see with some direction, right, from me through color or subject matter.
I guess I found that artists they tend to be at a different level of awareness. And it's just that's why they paint it. I mean, they paint what they like to look at and what they want to respond to. Whether people want to respond to that artist or not is another thing. But who else spends their time doing that? The person that's an architect or plumber, welder, whatever, they're about doing their trade. And we're saying we're, and I'm not saying everybody is great at it. Like, I'm not saying they're a visionary by any means, but I'm just saying, if you spend your life looking at things, how important is that you're looking at? Like, if you feel it's really important to talk, how you feel, say, sensitive to environmental issues, more sensitive to other things, political issues or whatever, and they say that's what my genre is going to be when I paint, whether you like whatever I paint, or sometimes it's just beauty, doesn't really matter. It's sort of like when you listen to a lot of songs and you listen to the riff, you say, God, that's a really nice beat. But then when you listen to the words, you go, oh my God, like the words, there's two different ways of looking at it, right?
Well, that's a good analogy as well. The music analogy is that we may listen to, classical music or a symphony or something that maybe there are no lyrics, but we're still impacted in some way by it because of the sounds and the skill of the musician. So for me, it's a visual communication. But I'm also, I like to think of painter's painter. I love the act of painting. I love the. I'm an oil painter as well. So I am following those traditions of oil painting. But I love the application of paint on a surface and the way a brush mark, the way paint is maybe applied, how that can also communicate something. So is it painted maybe softly, or is it painted aggressively? Is it paint applied thickly? So those are all kind of, for me, visual cues, I think, for the viewer to also not look only at the subject matter, but also the colors that the artist has selected and how they've applied the paint as well. So it's maybe a lot to ask of the viewer, but that's kind of.
Well, you got to raise the bar. If you don't raise the viewer's bar, they're not going to come into the gallery to look at your work. Because I think that's what's exciting about going to galleries. I wonder what it's going to be like when I go through that door. Like, you want that unexpected a little bit, expected that it's going to be a quality show, but also I need to see where you are at the next level. And I'm kind of, when I go to a gallery, I don't want to go in expecting to see another. I like to see other things that complement a zinger. Like, to say, wow, like that. This is the one that I will remember, because there's other work that is, I don't say neutral a little bit. But it's one thing if you go in looking for a mountain painting or a landscape of a prairie or something, and you go in, you have a good selection of them to choose from. That's one thing. But if you come in for a visual experience, and there's a series of paintings done like your work here, it comes down to, I want to really dig in and understand what's going on. Like, and if, by the way, if I can corner the artist and talk to him about that piece for a minute, I think generally artists like that. When you go to public showings, they do like to, if they can, spend a little bit of time with everybody when they talk, and hopefully the curators in the gallery, they do the rest of the work. And we don't like to store work, artists.
Yeah. And I've been fortunate that the work is collected, and there are people, that finds beautiful homes, and I've been lucky. There have been a few collectors in New York and different parts of the world that have found spaces for my work. So it's nice when you feel that people are connecting with it in different ways.
Yeah. Well, we hope that people will be able to find some of your conversation, a little bit of background on what you're doing. And it was great having this conversation. People can get a hold of Ian through his website, through Artists in Canada as well. And it's been I can't believe it's gone by already so quickly. Yeah, it's a very short visual experience, and we only had a few images of your work, but definitely more on your website. And your galleries and that are listed on your website as well. And we wish you the best in future and what's going on. And I'd love to see what's going to be coming up in the next year on your plate.
For sure. Well, thanks a lot, Paul, for that. I really appreciated with you.
And we've got David there. If he's still awake, we'll bring him on and we can do something. Otherwise, we can talk about work. There he is.
Yeah. Well, I've just amazed that I've finally met the love child of Bauhaus, Frank Lloyd Wright and Turner. I mean,
yeah.
What can I say, Ian?
Right.
That's,
yeah.
Well, I almost felt at point there's a little bit of Hockney in there somewhere too, and I think it's some of his early pieces of Hockney's work. Just he did a whole series on pools and different things, like bringing some of those kind of things back. But so all those artists, they help make inroads for other ones. Like they're if you don't get those prolific artists that are saying, pay attention to this type of stuff that I'm doing, and then when you follow a little bit, he's made a little bit of a pathway for you to go down that you can widen up into a road if you can do that. I think it's really nice to have that. Well, David, that's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's let's get to the business end of it, because it's always what we do at the end of the show. If I wanted to buy one of your pieces, Ian, what sort of money would I be looking at?
Some of those larger pieces would be in the neighborhood of 8,000 to 10,000 Canadian.
Okay.
Something like this one, which is maybe, I think that's about 4 to 5 feet wide, would be in the $5,000 mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well, that's you know, obviously it's just a guesstimate, but it's always so people have an idea of what it is.
And there are a lot of smaller artworks as well. Too. So
Yeah, obviously.
yeah. And then on my website, there are a couple of links to some online galleries where work can be purchased through those or directly through me too.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Great opportunities all around.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it. Have a great week ahead of yourself there. Enjoy the summer, what's left of it. It's fading quickly. The nights are short. They're short. The days are starting to shorten up on us already. But we'll get going. Appreciate it very much.
Well, Paul, thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for contributing towards Canadian art today. And don't forget, everybody, if you're watching it, to like and subscribe. If you want to contact either Paul or Ian, or you have anything to say or comments about them, please put them in the comments below the video. And until the next time, then, Paul.
You bet. Probably, yeah,
on Canadian Art Today.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.